Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. Leave. The word didn't just hang in the stagnant air of the ruby throne room. It severed the tether that had held Kalen's soul to his body for a decade. It was a single syllable, spoken with the cold indifference of a god dismissing a broken toy, yet it carried more violence than any blade Kalen had ever taken into his own flesh. Kalen remained kneeling, his forehead pressed against the freezing marble floor. The jagged wound on his shoulder, fresh, throbbing, and currently staining his white uniform with a blooming crimson flower, was forgotten. The pain in his body was a dull, distant hum compared to the agonizing screech of his heart shattering in his chest. Just 3 hours ago, he had taken a poisoned coral mint for the man sitting above him. Just 3 hours ago, delirious with fever and thinking he was dying, he had whispered the truth he had guarded for 10 years. "I love you, Valerian." He had thought it was his final confession. He had not expected the antidote to work so fast. He certainly hadn't expected to wake up, not in the infirmary, but dragged before the throne, his private journal, stolen from his quarters while he was unconscious, now resting in the Emperor's manicured hand. "Did you hear me, Shadowguard?" Emperor Valerian's voice was smooth, like velvet wrapped around a jagged rock. "I said leave. Get out of my sight." Kalen slowly lifted his head. He was a man composed of sharp angles and scars, a weapon forged in silence. His eyes, usually deadened by the horrors of his profession, now searched the face of the man he had worshipped since they were both boys. He looked for a flicker of the Valerian he knew, the boy who used to hide in the library, the prince who had wept when his favorite hound died. He found nothing. Valerian sat sprawled on the velvet cushions, his golden hair catching the candlelight, his face twisted into a sneer of utter revulsion. He held the leather-bound journal between 2 fingers, as if it were a dead rat. "I protected you," Kalen rasped, his voice wrecked from the smoke of the earlier ambush. "For 10 years, Valerian. I have been your shield, your shadow, and you were paid for it," Valerian countered, tossing the book down the steps. It landed with a pathetic thud near Kalen's knee. "I paid for a guard, a dog to bark and bite. I did not pay for—" Valerian gestured vaguely at Kalen, his lip curling. "I did not pay for a pervert to lust after me while he stood by my bed. The court was empty, save for them." Valerian had cleared the room. Kalen had thought it was for mercy. Now, he realized it was so the Emperor could dismantle him without witnesses. "It was never lust," Kalen whispered, the fight draining out of him. "It was devotion." "It is repulsive," Valerian spat, standing up. He descended 1 step, his shadow stretching long over the kneeling guard. "To think that while I slept, you were there, staring, imagining. It makes my skin crawl. You are disgusting, Kalen. Your very presence makes me feel unclean." The word struck with physical force. Disgusting. Kalen closed his eyes. He had taken arrows, survived torture in the dungeons of the Southern rebels, and fasted for weeks to ensure the prince had rations during the siege of High Rock. He had endured it all with a stoic pride. But this? Being looked at like a roach by the only person he had ever loved? This broke him. "I understand, Your Majesty," Kalen said, his voice hollow. He reached out, his trembling hand grasping the journal. He didn't stand. He simply bowed lower, his forehead touching the stone one last time. "I will resign my commission." "Resign?" Valerian laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "You don't get to resign. You are banished. I am sending you to the Grey Wastes. You will command the Penal Legion at the Frost Wall." The Frost Wall. A death sentence wrapped in a military assignment. No one returned from the wall. It was a place where disgraced soldiers went to die fighting the endless hordes of shadow beasts. "As you wish," Kalen said. He stood up, wincing as his shoulder screamed in protest. He didn't look at Valerian again. He couldn't. If he looked, he might beg, and he had just enough dignity left to refuse that humiliation. Long live the Emperor. Kalen turned and walked away. He didn't see Valerian's hand twitch, reaching out as if to stop him, before curling into a tight, trembling fist at his side. He didn't see the tears that instantly welled in the Emperor's eyes the moment the heavy oak doors slammed shut. The Grey Wastes were not a place of earth and sky. They were a void of ice and ash. The wind didn't blow. It shrieked. carrying the scent of ozone and rotting flesh from the beasts that roamed the eternal twilight. Kalen survived. That was his curse. He had always been too good at surviving. 6 months bled into a year. The soft, courtly guard who had stood silently in the corner of ballrooms died in the snow. In his place, a monster was forged. Kalen let his hair grow long and wild, matting with the blood of beasts. He stopped wearing the pristine white of the Imperial Guard, donning the black furs and rusted iron of the Penal Legion. He became the white wolf of the wastes. He fought with a reckless abandonment that terrified even the criminals under his command. He didn't fight to live. He fought because he was waiting for the beast that would finally be fast enough to kill him. But every night, when the adrenaline faded and the cold seeped into his bones, the memory returned. "You are disgusting." It was a poison that no antidote could cure. He replayed the moment 1,000 times. Had he stared too long? Had his hand lingered when he helped Valerian onto his horse? He had tried so hard to be invisible. He had failed. What Kalen didn't know, what he couldn't know from the edge of the world, was that the capital was rotting from the inside out. Without his shadow, the sun began to dim. Emperor Valerian sat in the same ruby throne room, but the air was heavy with paranoia. Since Kalen's departure, Valerian had not slept more than 2 hours a night. He saw assassins in every shadow. He tasted poison in every cup. He had replaced Kalen, of course. He had 12 guards now, elite knights in shining armor. But they were useless. They didn't know how to step softly so as not to wake him from his nightmares. They didn't know that he preferred his tea at exactly a certain temperature to soothe his chronic throat ache. They didn't know that when he tapped his finger against his thigh, it meant he was having a panic attack and needed to be escorted out of the crowded court immediately. Kalen had known. Kalen had known before Valerian even knew himself. "Your Majesty," High Chancellor Moros whispered, sliding into the room like a viper in silk robes. "The reports from the north are troubling. The shadow beast migration has increased. The frost wall is buckling." Valerian gripped the arms of his throne until his knuckles turned white. "And the Penal Legion?" "Decimated, sire." But Moros hesitated. "The commander holding the line, the one they call the White Wolf. He refuses to retreat. He has held the breach alone for 3 days." Valerian's heart hammered against his ribs. Alive, he was still alive. "Prepare the Royal Legion," Valerian commanded, standing abruptly. "Sire." Moros blinked. "For a border skirmish? Surely a general can." "I said prepare the Legion." Valerian roared, his voice cracking. "I am going to the north. But the council, hang the council. If the wall falls, the empire falls. I will lead the charge myself." It was a lie, and they both knew it. Valerian didn't care about the empire. He didn't care about the wall. He was a starving man, and his sustenance was dying in the snow 1,000 miles away. The battlefield was a cacophony of hell. The sky was choked with black smoke, lit only by the violet flashes of the shadow beast's magic and the orange roar of burning siege towers. Valerian sat atop his white warhorse, his armor pristine, looking utterly out of place amidst the gore. His royal legion crashed into the flank of the beast horde, turning the tide, but Valerian's eyes were scanning the front lines. He saw him. It was hard to recognize the man. Kalen was covered in black ichor. He moved with a terrifying fluidity, wielding 2 shattered blades. He was a whirlwind of death, spinning and slashing, a one-man wall against a tide of monsters. "Kalen!" Valerian screamed, the sound tearing from his throat. The figure froze. For a split second, amidst the chaos, the White Wolf turned. That hesitation cost him. A massive shadow alpha, a beast the size of a carriage, lunged from the mist. Its claws, glowing with necrotic energy, raked across Kalen's back. Kalen went down. No, Valerian didn't think. He didn't strategize. He spurred his horse forward, drawing his ceremonial sword, a blade that had never tasted blood. "Protect the Emperor," the general screamed, but Valerian was already galloping into the fray. He rode through the nightmare, trampling beasts, his vision tunneling on the fallen figure in the black furs. He reached Kalen just as the alpha raised its claws for the killing blow. Valerian threw himself from his horse, sliding in the mud, and thrust his sword upward. It was a clumsy strike, but it was fueled by a year of desperate, maddening regret. The blade pierced the alpha's throat. The beast thrashed, throwing Valerian aside like a rag doll. He hit a pile of rubble, his ribs cracking with a sickening crunch. The world spun. Darkness encroached. The last thing Valerian saw was a bloodied hand reaching for him, and a pair of eyes, wild, furious, and terrified, staring into his. The wind howled outside the medical tent, but inside, the air was warm and smelled of antiseptic herbs. Valerian woke with a gasp, pain flaring in his chest. He tried to sit up, but a firm hand pushed him back down. Stay down. You broke 3 ribs and punctured a lung. You're lucky to be breathing. The voice was gravel and ash, but the cadence was familiar. Valerian turned his head. Kalen sat on a wooden stool beside the cot. He was cleaned up, though clean was relative. His face was a map of new scars, and a bandage covered half his neck. He wore a simple linen tunic, his muscular arms crossed over his chest. He looked older. Harder. You. Valerian breathed, tears instantly stinging his eyes. You're alive. Disappointed? Kalen asked. His voice was devoid of emotion, cold and barren as the wastes. I suppose I failed to die as ordered. Kalen, stop, Valerian pleaded, reaching out. Kalen flinched away from the hand, as if it were a burning brand. He stood up, towering over the cot. Why are you here, Valerian? Why did you come? To mock me? To see if the disgusting wretch had finally perished? No, Valerian sobbed. The mask of the Emperor shattered completely. I came because I was dying without you. Kalen laughed, a dark, humorless sound. You have a strange way of showing affection. You exile me to hell. You called my love for you a sickness. I had to. Valerian shouted, ignoring the pain in his chest. Do you think I didn't know? Do you think I didn't see the way you looked at me for 10 years? I saw every glance, Kalen, and I craved them like a starving man craves bread. Kalen froze. The anger in his eyes faltered, replaced by confusion. What? The council, Valerian whispered, his energy fading. Chancellor Moros. He found your journal before I did. He brought it to me. He told me that if I didn't remove you, the council would. They would use you against me. They would torture you to control me. Or worse, they would kill you just to teach me a lesson about attachment. Valerian looked up, tears streaming down his temples into his golden hair. I had to make them believe I hated you. I had to make you believe I hated you. If you thought there was hope, you would have stayed. You would have tried to fight them. And they would have skinned you alive, Kalen. The wastes were the only place Moros couldn't reach you. The silence in the tent was heavy, suffocating. Kalen stared at the man he had hated and loved for a year. He saw the truth in Valerian's eyes. He saw the fear. It wasn't the arrogance of a king. It was the terror of a lover protecting his heart. You. Kalen's voice shook. You foolish, arrogant child. I know, Valerian wept. I am a coward. I called you disgusting because I felt disgusting. I felt weak. I sacrificed your heart to save your life. And I have hated myself for every second of every day since. Kalen looked at his hands, hands that had killed hundreds of beasts in the last year, hands that had yearned to hold this man. You sent me to hell, Kalen said softly. I know. I nearly died a dozen times. I know. And yet, Kalen sighed, a sound of infinite weariness. He stepped forward. Slowly, deliberately, he sank to his knees beside the cot. The movement was familiar. It was the position of the guard, the servant. But then he reached out. His rough, calloused hand cupped Valerian's cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear. And yet, Kalen whispered, leaning in until their foreheads touched, my only regret in the darkness was that I hadn't kissed you before I left. Valerian let out a broken sob and surged upward, ignoring his broken ribs. He crashed his lips against Kalen's. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate. It tasted of blood, of salt, of a year of wasted time. It was the collision of two stars that had been orbiting each other in the dark. Kalen groaned, his arms wrapping around Valerian's waist, anchoring him. He was gentle, mindful of the injuries, but his hunger was voracious. When they broke apart, breathless, Valerian rested his head against Kalen's shoulder. Don't send me away again, Kalen rumbled, the vibration traveling through Valerian's chest. I will fight the council. I will fight the world. But do not exile me from your side. Never, Valerian vowed. Let them come. Let Moros try. If he touches you, I will burn the empire to the ground. Kalen pulled back, looking at the emperor. The boy was gone. The cruel tyrant was gone. All that remained was a man in love. We have a war to win first, Kalen said, a small, genuine smile touching his scarred lips. And then, we have a conversation about your communication skills. Valerian laughed, wincing. As you command, my wolf. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, not with chains, but with a truth that bled. If you enjoyed seeing Kalen take control of his destiny, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a lover who destroyed your life just to save it? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,